Stream. We're going to review Week 12 in the NFL. I'm Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders, joined by Ian O'Connor from EdjSports, like every Monday. Live streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. If you are watching us live, be sure to make comments in the chat. You can ask us questions all about Week 12 games. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, please like and subscribe. You may be listening to us after the fact on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network, in which case, please subscribe to the show, give us a review. We'll read your review next time. And of course, don't forget about our big sale on FO Plus. FO Plus is now on sale for just 99 cents a week for an annual subscription. It's a limited time offer, but it gets you all of our stats and analysis, fantasy data, and betting information. Do not miss out. 99 cents a week. You can access this at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe, or underneath the show, there should be a listing for how to get the subscription. Ian, welcome again. Let's talk about Thanksgiving games. And we're actually going to go back a little bit for Week 12 and talk about the Raiders against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving afternoon, easily the best of the Thanksgiving Day games, and it was actually the most watched regular season game since 1990.
Yeah, that was really surprising to me. We're talking kind of some of the games you think about we've had in the regular season recently, the Chiefs and Rams on Monday Night Football a couple of years ago. Granted, that was on ESPN, which not everyone has, I guess. And then you've got even I would think, you and the Patriots facing Tom Brady this year back at Gillette for the first time, I thought would be maybe a very highly
or the undefeated Patriots against the undefeated Colts in 2007. I thought might be the most watched game.
Yeah, so very surprising when I saw that, but so it ended up being a good one. Needed overtime to settle it. We're going to start in the third quarter. Mike McCarthy, who was really good through the first few weeks, we talked about him even last week or 2 weeks ago. Came into this week ranked sixth. He had dropped 4 or 5 spots over the last couple of weeks in our coach rankings. He had a couple of decisions that really aren't going to help him. And these are going to be a little bit more aggressive than some of the other ones that we've seen and perhaps some other models. Ours typically does end up being a little bit more aggressive. We've got a whole lot of play-by-play data over the last 20-plus years. Our customizations utilizing DVOA we think are some of the best, if not the best, out there. So we stand by them, as aggressive as they may be. The first one came early in the third quarter, about 10 minutes left, 4th and 3 on the Dallas 41. So Cowboys on their own side of midfield, but approaching midfield. McCarthy chooses to punt when they're down 4. So it's a 3.8% decrease in pre-snap win probability. Ended up being 4th of the week, the 4th worst of the week. And it just, even without CeeDee Lamb, even without Amari Cooper, you've still got Dak Prescott. The Dallas offense is very good. Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin, a couple tight ends that are capable. Schultz has had a really good year. You still have Zeke. You've got Tony Pollard. Cedric Wilson has kind of shown at times that he can be very good. I think he had some drops in this one or maybe the week before against the Chiefs, but still have some playmakers. With Dak at quarterback, that's just 4th and 3. You'd expect even an average team to convert that probably around 50-ish%, maybe a little bit more than 50. The Cowboys, especially against that Vegas defense, which really isn't all that great, should be able to convert that. So this one, 3.8, we're going to see, though, this week, aside from our very top error of the week, they're going to be smaller numbers. They're around below 3, 4, 5%-ish, which aren't, huge ones that we're going to, come out and say are absolutely terrible. There's no way that they should have punted or kicked a field goal. Nonetheless, based on the customizations and the game state there was the 4th worst call. And then about 8 minutes later, they were in a similar situation, 4th and 2 this time on their own 33, down 8 this time with only 2:20 left in the third quarter. Chooses to punt again. It's just 0.1% worse at 3.9%. So a couple of those that, might seem kind of counterintuitive in your own territory, especially when you're losing. Maybe people don't want them to fail and give up kind of automatic points, if you will, which there really are no automatic points in the NFL, as we know. But still, a couple of decisions that we just thought McCarthy should have been a little bit more aggressive. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks that he's kind of struggled in these close games. And then moving to the end of the fourth quarter, Dallas had one of the most impactful plays of the week, though. They were able to tie it up. Dak Prescott hit Dalton Schultz for that 32-yard touchdown. They were then able – that was a 20.7% increase in pre-snap win probability. They were able to get the 2-point conversion to tie it. And then the Raiders had some missed opportunities the next possession. And the third most impactful play of the week was Derek Carr's incompletion. It might seem like not a big deal. 3rd and 3, the Dallas 38, 2 minutes left. Falls incomplete. It's a 20% decrease in win probability. Part of that decrease, or actually half of that decrease, is due to the decision that came next. So looking at the start of the play at 3rd and 3, and then the start of the 4th down play, Bisaccia chose to kick the field goal instead of go for it, which was our worst decision of the week at 13.5%. If he makes the right decision, that 3rd down incompletion is only a 13.5% decrease. It's not in our pregame, or it's not in our top 5 win probability swings. The Raiders maybe don't even go to overtime in this one if they're able to convert that. It's 4th and 3. It's a Dallas 38, a 56-yard field goal. Carlson had a really good game. I think he had 2 50-plus yarders and up like 4 or 5 total field goals, including the game winner. Has been good this year, but that's not a guarantee. And with 2 minutes left, Dallas still had 2 timeouts. That's a lot of time for any NFL team, especially one led by Dak Prescott and that Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I think that the goal there is by going for it on that 4th and 3. First of all, like you said, it's a hard field goal. Our expected score off that field goal indoors is 1.86 points. So that, there's like over a third of a chance that he misses that field goal, even indoors. And, you also want to take as much time off the clock as possible. Like even if you end up with a field goal, if you end up with a field goal with no time remaining, it's a shorter field goal attempt and you don't let the Cowboys come back on you. So, that was a mistake to kick that. It's just a really long field goal. And again, like we keep talking about, the Dallas offense is really good. The 4th and 3. Sorry, this is the Raiders. Sorry, my mistake. This is the Raiders offense, which is not as good. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But, still should be able to convert 4th and 3 more often than they don't convert 4th and 3.
Yeah, and interestingly,
Hitchhiker's Pie, by the way, says we can look forward to Dan Quinn's unique 4th down decision-making on Thursday night for the Cowboys. Actually, the Cowboys have not announced who's going to be taking over as head coach with Mike McCarthy on the COVID list, but I'm guessing it's going to be Quinn.
Yeah, we know it won't be McCarthy for sure. He's out. But interestingly, too, from this, it's a decision with Bisaccia that doesn't show up in our top decisions, but was earlier, and I think it was about 8 minutes left in the 4th quarter. They had the 4th and 7 at the Dallas 12. They kicked the field goal. Carlson made it. They went up 8 points, but Dallas had the illegal formation. They lined up over the center, and they could have – it looked like Derek Carr wanted them to accept it and go for it on 4th and 2 at the 7 to get a chance to run off more clock if they can convert. Even if they end up with a field goal, there's less time. If they get a touchdown, they put it – they're up 5. It's a 2-score game at that point. It puts them up to 12 at least. So he decided just to keep the points, and I think we were talking about it here this morning. Kind of human psychology, I think, comes into play there with the points are literally on the board at that point. You've made the field goal. You don't have to worry about potentially missing it. It's there. But if they would have accepted the penalty, gotten to 4th and 2 at the 7 and gone for it, their win probability would have been 1% higher than it was after they made the field goal. So a small number, but in a game as close as this, that really adds up. It could have been the difference between overtime and the Raiders winning it in regulation if they were able to convert that and get a touchdown there. Again, no guarantee, but just looking at the odds of converting that 4th and 2, it's probably they convert that more often than not. So one that kind of flies under the radar that I saw a couple people mention during the game, but really there really wasn't a whole lot of talk about that, but an interesting one nonetheless.
So ultimately, the Raiders won the game. It was some miscues by both teams, I think, but it was one of those games where both teams actually ended up with really strong DVOA. Dallas was at 23% for the game, and Vegas at 21%.
Yeah, a lot of penalties in that one too. Whether some questionable, some good.
Anthony
they
Brown
combined for 10 each or 10 plus each. That was
Anthony Brown with 4 DPIs in one game was bad.
He didn't have any coming into that game, if I heard correctly. Is that right for the season?
I'm not sure, but it was a lot of DPIs.
I think on that last one too, if he just turns his head, it didn't look like he really made much contact. Just didn't get his head around, and ultimately cost them there late.
Let's talk about another game. This from Sunday, the Eagles and the Giants, low-scoring game, not the most appealing from a viewer standpoint, but a number of intriguing coaching decisions. And Nick Sirianni takes home the top play call of the weekend for this game.
Yeah, and I don't think, based on the coaches we've got tonight, Ron Rivera's hit or miss. Pete Carroll, I don't expect to ever make a good fourth down decision, or maybe once out of every 8, 9, 10, something like that. But
Yeah, no
should
kidding.
stick at the top for the week. Coming in the third quarter, early in the third quarter, 12:51 left. Had 4th and 2 on the Giants' 40. They were down 3. Instead of kicking a very long field goal to try and tie, chose to go for it. Was a 6.9% increase in pre-snap win probability. Ended up not working out. Jalen Hurts' pass falls incomplete to Jalen Reagor. I don't remember if he dropped this one, but he had a handful of drops, including 2 huge ones on that last that last gasp effort down by the goal line, getting kind of the Nelson Aguilar treatment. In this one, it's was tough, but still, Sirianni made the correct decision by our model in this in this situation to go for it, increasing by 7%. Despite those drop passes, though, they still had a chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter. Ended up having our most impactful play of the week, but it was not good for the Eagles. With less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I think they still had all 3 of their timeouts. They had at least 2. They had all 3 timeouts. Got 1st and 10 just across midfield, driving down for a game-winning touchdown. And Boston Scott gets through the line, picks up about 5 yards, I think, and fumbles. Recovered by the Giants. That cost the Eagles 30.4% win probability. Would basically in the game, they were able to get the stop, use their timeouts, get the ball back with under a minute left, I think, or maybe a little over a minute. Got close, but again, those Reagor drops would end up sealing the victory for the Giants. So really, like you said, Aaron, wasn't a great game, either pregame leading up to it, unless you're a fan of either of these teams. Anything else really from this game other than kind of those plays that we've picked out here?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts just with his worst passing game of the year. Some of that is Reagor drops, but some of it was Hurts just overthrowing guys, making bad decisions. 3 interceptions, only 8 passing first downs, no touchdowns, minus 157 passing DYAR. So really bad game for Jalen Hurts this week.
What is the 157? What is I don't know if you have off the top of your head an all-time bad, but is that kind of near the top of the worst?
No, all-time bad is like minus 300.
Oh, wow.
There's like a David Klingler game and like a Ryan Fitzpatrick game that are like minus 300 or something.
Yeah, it's still bad. 157.
Minus 157 is still pretty bad, though. It's one of the worst of the year, I think.
Yep. Wow.
Let's talk a little bit about you mentioned the coach rankings a couple of times in here. So let's talk a little bit about the updated coaching rankings coming on Wednesday. What do you got coming for us?
Yeah, so last week we put them out. We didn't have a video with holiday schedules, but this week we'll have our Champion Gaming brand ambassador, Katie George, back in with us. We'll have a video kind of updating the rankings. Interested to see some of the movement based on the decisions this week. But we'll have, looking at throwing some challenge flags. So we'll take some decisions that are kind of under the radar. So maybe a couple that I mentioned here already that we kind of disagree with. I'm sure the Bisaccia one will show up there. And then we give out some golden whistles where we look at decisions, probably one like Sean McVay going for it from his own 29, early. It doesn't show up in the top 5s anywhere. And it didn't work out, but it was still the right call. So things like that we'll highlight. And then any storylines that come up, Matt Nagy kind of on the hot seat. He's been pretty good this year as far as fourth downs go. And I think we talked about that either last week or the week before, has been decent at making those decisions. But looking at some coaches like that and just kind of whatever the storylines are, we'll try and cover and look at it from a decision-making standpoint, seeing how those coaches are doing. Well,
that's not why he's on the hot seat.
Right. Not at all.
He's on the hot side for things that we're not measuring when we're talking about fourth downs. The Rams one is interesting because that's the one where Troy Aikman called them desperate for going for it on 4th and 1 in their own side of the field. And we've got to get to the point where we're not referring to those things as desperate. You can disagree with the decision, but there's really not desperation behind it. There's analysis behind it.
Yeah, and it was and I think that was one he mentioned, he thought it was too early in the game. It's like, I don't know if it's ever really too early for, not only was it 4th and 1, it's 4th and inches. Like they were
it was
inside
really
half a yard.
Yeah.
Extremely short. And that LA team came in, I think, second in DVOA, in offensive DVOA coming into this game. So it was, no desperation at all early in the game. They were only down 7-0, but with a chance to hang on to the ball, especially the way they started, it was not a great start for them. Just didn't work out. Green Bay made a really good play defensively to stop them. So.
All right, let's talk about the top five most impactful plays of the week in terms of win probability. Number 5 shocks me because it's a first quarter play, and you do not normally end up with a first quarter play having that much effect on win probability.
Yeah, we didn't. There really wasn't a whole lot of big swings this week. We did have some close games, but they were even ones that were close where teams were the favorite. Was still up pretty high in the game, or the game wasn't really close at all coming down to the end. So in this one, number 5 was Texans Jets 0-0. I think it was the opening drive of the game. Houston had 2nd and 9 at the Jets 17, trying to get a touchdown, get on the board early. And Tyrod Taylor's pass was tipped up at the line, intercepted, taken back to the Houston 37. I think it was a big man interception there. Good for a 17.9% swing in win probability. Number 4 and number 3 we covered just a moment ago. Dak Prescott's touchdown to Dalton Schultz was obviously a big one. Even after that, they were still at only 39% chance to win. They jumped up after that 2-point conversion. And that was number 4. And then number 3 was Derek Carr. Mentioned the pass that fell incomplete on 3rd and 3. That this one is kind of propped up by Bisaccia's error on kicking the field goal there on that following play, but still 27%. This one at number 2 was Andy Dalton late in the game against Detroit, the first game of the week on Thanksgiving afternoon. They had a 3rd and 4, I think, inside the 10 and converted with 5 yards down to the 4-yard line, essentially allowing the Bears to just kneel out the clock or run out the clock. I think Dalton kind of got over to the middle of the field, and then they knelt it out, kicked the walk-off field goal as time expired. But that 3rd down conversion was huge for them. Ensured that they could run down the clock and get the last chance down 1. It was a 30.2% increase. And then number 1, we talked about Boston Scott, who had a good game, scored against the Giants, but came up late with a fumble that didn't really look like a big hit or anything. I saw the play. I don't exactly remember what happened. It looked like it just kind of squeezed out of his arm, and he just lost it and went flying forward. So tough break for them, but 30.4, which really most weeks we see our number 1 in the 40s up into the 50s on average. I think for that biggest win probability swing, obviously big weeks, it'll be 70, 80, 90. But yeah, 30.4 is pretty low for our number 1. So just kind of more, evidence of the fact that the games really, there weren't any that were in, had some big moments late, it seems like. Even that Packers game coming down to the wire with the Rams and the very questionable time management from McVay, the Packers were still in the 90% to win. So not really a whole lot in any of these games.
All right, we're going to get to the top 5 play calls. Just reminding everybody again, if you're watching, that we are live streaming at 1 p.m. Eastern every day. So please rate us 5 stars on your podcast app, leave a review, subscribe to all the Football Outsiders shows, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube or your podcast app. Every day we're here, 1 o'clock Eastern, and then afterwards on the Football Outsiders podcast network. We want to talk about the top 5 best coaches' decisions of the week on 4th down. And Ian, why don't you start us off with number 5, someone who doesn't go for it that often, but he did this week, and that's Mike Zimmer.
Yeah, Zimmer's actually been pretty good here of late. He had the really bad game earlier in the year, but it seems like he's come up, at least, once every other week or so, and has been pretty good in these kind of obvious situations, not really meaning to take anything away from him, but 4th and goals. He had the one late against the Chargers that was really good that sealed that game. This one was the 4th and goal at the 3 late in the game. So earlier in the first quarter on their second drive, I think it was, he had a 4th and goal at the 2 and chose to go for it. That was worth about 3.5%. And they were able to convert, score, and go up 7-0 on that one. This one was about 9 minutes left. They were down 8, 34-26. And this is one where I think a lot of coaches we would see kick a field goal, say, hey, there's 9 minutes left. We kick a field goal, we get it to 5. If we can hold them and get a touchdown, we can win the game. Even if they get another field goal, we still have a chance to tie with a touchdown and 2-point conversion. But he chose to go and get it right there, and knowing, hey, we don't get it. We know what our deficit is. We get it. We're in a tie ball game, or at least down 2 potentially. So this one, 4th and goal at the 3, where the required conversion rate, when I worked it out earlier, was around 26 or 28%. You're a yard behind a 2-point conversion, so probably in the low 40s-ish, low to mid 40s, I would imagine, with 2-point conversion being pretty close to 50%, and depending on the team. So a really good decision by him. They didn't get this one, unfortunately, for the Vikings. but both teams, San Francisco ended up getting the win and moved up to, I think, 6th in the wild card, right? The 6th spot in the NFC. Minnesota lost.
Minnesota's still in the 7th spot despite a losing record.
Yeah, with Carolina losing and the Saints, I think, kind of helped them get to 7th. So they're still in it. And if Zimmer continues to make some decisions like he did yesterday with that team that he's got, hopefully Dalvin Cook, from what I've seen, it looks like he might be out for a little bit. I'm not sure if it's the rest of the year or not.
Yeah, Alexander Madison season, baby.
Yeah, just like it seems like it is every year coming down the end of the season or fairly often. But yeah, if he can keep it up, he can keep them in the playoff contention and potentially get them in to play in the wild card round. So number 4 is Frank Reich, a guy we see on here a lot of time. He's actually on both lists this week, which also seems like happens fairly often with him. Early in the game, he'll kind of have some conservative calls, which we'll see. But this one was in the second quarter. He actually had a handful early in the game that were good as well. 4th and 1 at the Tampa Bay 18, up 3 points with 6 minutes left, choosing to go for it instead of kicking the field goal, knowing against that Buccaneers team, even with a good Colts defense who's better against the run than they are the pass, but still a good defense, knowing that it's going to take more than field goals to win that game. So going on to go for it, there was a 4.3% increase. They did convert that. Matt LaFleur at number 3. This was early in the game. This one was fun to watch because it's at Green Bay. It's their opening drive, I believe. 4th and 1 at their own 49-yard line. And like as soon as I think it might have been Dillon or Jones that ran at the play before, but as soon as the crowd saw that he was short and it was 4th and 1, they started cheering to go for it. And LaFleur, had no hesitation doing so. So our coach of the year last year has kind of picked up. He hasn't been as good as he was last year, kind of come back a little bit, but still has been very aggressive this year. And choosing to go for it, there was a 4.8% increase in pre-snap win probability. A.J. Dillon picked up the 2 yards like it seems like he always does when they need it. A guy that reminds me of kind of Derrick Henry, obviously not the size and speed combination as Henry. No one is really like him, but I think I've seen over the last couple weeks he's got the most yards after contact or top 2 or 3 since he came into the league last year. So with a guy like Dillon, and especially with Rodgers, where you could play fake and a guy that knows how to get the yardage needed a lot of times, just really smart decision on the floor to trust those guys that are some of the best in the league. And then number 2, no surprise here. I don't think either one of us is really shocked to see John Harbaugh up here. Number 2 with a 5.4% increase. This was early in the game as well, early in the second quarter. They're up 3 already, 4th and 1 at their own 44, nearing midfield with Lamar Jackson in that offense. Really no surprise to see that at all. I think that's pretty much expected for Baltimore. Anytime they're outside their own 25 or own 20, they're just going to go for it. So really good there, 5.4. And then number 1, we covered Nick Sirianni for the Eagles at 4th and 2 at the 40. That was a 6.9% increase that will probably stand through tonight's Monday Night Football game. You never know. But that one seems like it'll end up being the best of the week through tonight.
And then the 5 worst coaching decisions on 4th down, the decisions that coaches made that had the most negative impact in terms of win probability. Starting off with a coach who I don't think has been particularly good on 4th downs this year, and that's David Culley of the Houston Texans.
Yeah, the interesting one with David Culley here is it was late in the game, early in the 4th quarter, but late in the game, about 12 and a half minutes left, had 4th and 3 at his own 39, trailing by 4. So what's interesting to me here, is earlier on their opening drive, it was 4th and 1 at their own 41. He chose to go for it, and they got 10 yards. Rex Burkhead got 10 yards on the play. Here we are later, in getting into, not really a desperate situation. There's still a lot of time left, but you're down 4. You need some points. You need to move the ball to punt. You don't know how many possessions are left in this game. So 4th and 3, expected. Even a team like Houston playing against, not a great offense, but playing against the Jets, who aren't a good team at all, you would expect them to convert that 50% of the time or more. So a situation where you'd like to see him go for that, but kind of got conservative there and ended up Jets ended up getting a field goal. They got the ball back with a chance to win it or to tie it up at least, but weren't able to come through. And this was this one really hurt them. And then tied at number 4 is McCarthy, who's got 2 that we covered. Down 4, the 4th and 3 at their own 41 early in the third quarter. You can see there's 3.8. And then just slightly worse was a little bit later in that quarter with 2.5 left at their own 33, 4th and 2, choosing to punt there. That's 3.9%. Number 2, I just mentioned Frank Reich kind of ends up on both of these lists a lot of times. Up 3, 4th and 1 at his own 43 in the first quarter. Really surprising here, Jonathan Taylor, there was all the MVP talk for him, but whether or not he's MVP, he's a very good running back. They have a good offensive line. The Bucs have a really good defensive or good run stopping unit, but it's 1 yard in the NFL. You don't even have to run it. Carson Wentz, can get out, move out of the pocket, make something happen. So was really surprised this happened. It was early on, but still surprising nonetheless to see him go kind of conservative on a 4th and 1 nearing midfield. And then number 1 we talked about, and we've been kind of getting some pushback on this one on social media. But looking at it, we talk about it all the time. It's not a gimme field goal. It's 56 yards. Even if you make that field goal, you're still down 3. You're still up 3, giving the Cowboys a chance to tie or to win it with a touchdown with 2 minutes left and 2 timeouts. So really, it's hard to argue for the field goal on that one. Someone said the only decision on here was the one where the coach won the game. But I mean, the coach doesn't know he's going to win the game in the end at the point of the decision. So
right,
can't really
and
look at it that way.
The goal of football is to win the game, not to go to overtime.
Mm-hmm. Even if you win in overtime, like they did, still, yeah, you want to win the game as soon as you can. That's at the end of regulation. So really hard, like I said, just hard to argue for the field goal there, knowing who's on the other side of the ball or on the other side of the field that's going to get the ball with not a lot of time left, but definitely enough time in the NFL for a team to get down the field.
All right, don't forget you can find these top 5s and more over at the EdjSports.com top 5 editorial section, along with the Risky Business column talking about the Lions' loss on Thanksgiving and the value of timeouts late in a close game. That brings us to previewing Monday Night Football. I'm sure everyone is excited for the battle of injured Russell Wilson versus Taylor Heinicke. Seattle versus Washington tonight. Washington, if they win this game, they're in the playoff race. I mean, they'll be 5-7 or they'll be 5-6. They'll be 5-6. And Minnesota right now has the 7th spot at 5-6. So Washington wins this and they're in it. The market is at pick'em for this game. So what do you think about tonight and Monday Night Football?
Yeah, and just on the lines of the playoffs there, not even just the wild card. That puts them, I think, 2 games out of first in the NFC East, and they still have 2 games against Dallas, 2 games against Philly, and a game against the Giants. So not completely out of the question. A little bit tough. We still think Dallas is a good team, obviously, but they'll be right in it for the NFC East race as well. And you mentioned it's a pick 'em in the market. We've got it at Seattle -1. So I think this is actually our closest game of the week. It's at 50.5% win probability for Seattle and 49.5% for Washington. So very evenly matched here. It looks like there are a couple places that have Seattle -1, but we're right on that. So really not a lot of value to be had there. The total, really not much either. Looking at now, Vegas Insider is at 47 as the total. We've got it at 56% chance to reach 47 points or go over, to go over 47. So not counting the push there at 47 points, we're at 52.5. So there's really not a lot here. Interestingly, Seattle opened as 2-point favorites last Sunday, I think it was. And it quickly, shifted down to Washington, got up to as high as Washington -1.5 on Thanksgiving or on Friday, and then shifted back to a pick 'em, I think, on Saturday or Sunday. And looking at that, 66% of the money is on Seattle in the market, and 61% of the bets are on Washington. So pretty split, but people that are putting bigger dollar value bets on this are on Seattle at about 2-1. But yeah, for our model, we really see it as a pretty evenly matched game. Not really a ton of value to be had on either the spread or the total.
The problem here is that Russell Wilson has been such a different quarterback since he came back from the finger injury. He was really, really good, especially in the first 3 games of the season. But even if you look specifically at the first 5 games of the season, Seattle's offense was still among the best in the league. And then they had the 3 Geno Smith games. And then the last 2 games, Russell Wilson has been a problem. So it's difficult to project what you should expect from the Seattle offense. Like, how much weight do you put on the last 2 games, given that Wilson has an injury? It's not just an issue of sample size where this is 2 games and you have to consider the whole season, because the injury could definitely be playing into how Russell Wilson is playing. So I definitely like Seattle a little bit over Washington in this game, but I agree that it's pretty close because we don't really know what you're getting out of Wilson. An interesting prop bet, I think, though, is Wilson over 1.5 passing touchdowns. We have him projected with 1.9 passing touchdowns. That Washington secondary has been bad against wide receivers this year. They've been the worst in the league against deep passes by DVOA. I really like the idea of Wilson getting 2 or 3 passing touchdowns in this game. These are not great defenses between these two teams. This could be kind of even though the quarterbacks aren't, especially Heineke's not great, this could be a little bit of a shootout.
Yeah, in Seattle, look, I think Alex Collins is pretty much their only healthy running back and he's even got some injuries of his own.
They really have to pass.
He's banged up.
They have to pass the ball, and so let's see. We'll see how Wilson is doing. The Seattle defense, by the way, is really good against first wide receivers, which is not so great for Terry McLaurin tonight, but they're bad against running backs as receivers. So it could be a big J.D. McKissick night.
Yeah, and you talked about Washington. Another thing I noticed this morning looking at this game, Seattle is 15th in the NFC right now, but the way the middle of the pack is there, coming up on the 6th and 7th spot in the playoffs, they're at 4 and 7. You mentioned Minnesota in the 7th spot at 5 and 6. They still have a shot if they can win and kind of string together some wins here too. But I feel like they have to win tonight.
Nobody in the NFC is dead other than Detroit.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for today's show. I want to thank everybody who's watching right now on Twitch and YouTube and in the corner of Football Outsiders and our little widget. Want to thank everybody who listens on the Football Outsiders podcast network, everybody who commented during the show, Todd Singer, Hitchhiker's Pie, Useful was first, who I believe was first. Tomorrow, Scott Spratt and Derek Klassen talking about fantasy football. Wednesday, Cale Clinton with me and Mike Tanier doing Ask Me Anything. Thursday, JP Acosta will be on to preview Thursday and the Week 13 games with me and Tanier. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite platform. Leave a review if you can. Don't forget the FO Plus sale, only 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. You can access this footballoutsiders.com/subscribe or through the link in the description of this show. And don't forget to check EdjSports.com for additional betting analysis. That's EdjSports.com. Thank you, Ian, for joining me, and I will see you next Monday, and we will see you tomorrow. Watchers, we will see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern for the Fantasy Show with Scott and Derek. Enjoy Monday Night Football.